We got Robert and Dawn back in the studio, and it's more sake time. And this morning, our theme is It's the Water, and a little bit more.
All about the magic, supernatural, heavenly shrine water.
And this is, you sent me a couple of stories about this. The story in it itself is how they even discovered this stuff, this water. And I'll let you tell the story because it's
Okay,
pretty cool.
So we're going to pass around some sake made with this magic shrine water. And it's actually not magic.
Yeah, it is.
It kind of gets that moniker. Mm-hmm. You know, the story's been told so many times. But this is before they had chemical analysis.
Okay.
So Dawn, she's actually getting to the cups here. I guess they need to be the right temperature.
Okay.
So you're going to hear, when you start studying sake, you're going to hear about what's called miyamizu.
Okay.
And it comes back to, this is around 1840. And there was a guy, brewer, he had two breweries. His name was Yamamuda Tazaemon. And he had these breweries are roughly 5-6 miles apart. And one is in Uozaki, which is a little further towards the west. And he had another brewery in Nishinomiya. And whether he figured this out or his customers told him, the sake from Nishinomiya was consistently better.
Yeah.
Now, back then in the Edo period, we're talking, like I said, 1840s. Edo period started in like 1603 and goes up to 1867. So they find out, well, wait a second, why is this sake at the two breweries different? They're so close together. So he starts switching the brewers around. He uses the same rice, the same milling rate. We talked about the milling rate last time. And he tries absolutely everything. And they end up at the very last minute saying, hey, let's move some of the water. Let's take the water from Nishinomiya. They're getting from a specific well there, and they ship it over to Uozaki, and lo and behold, the sake turns out great. Now, what that means is, does it taste better? Not necessarily. Back then, you needed a rigorous fermentation because you had a lot of spoilage, about 6 out of 10 bottles. And I keep in mind, this is in the Nara region, so this is around Kobe, and they're shipping this stuff to Edo, which is not the capital at this time. The capital is still in Kyoto, but they were shipping a lot of this sake over there. So good sake meant stable sake. And so this water produced, it got famous to the point where brokers appeared. They have records of iron brands, and they would brand these barrels. There were brokers of water up into the Meiji period still selling this stuff to other breweries. So it was one of the first times where sake had an ingredient listed on these barrels to kind of sell it. It's like I joke, it's like the original bottled water, Fiji water. Yeah. So, and the reason that this water was such a good find is because if you ever go to Nishinomiya, they've got this mountain range called the Rokko Mountains. It's made out of granite, so that's an igneous rock. And so the way that's formed is the Philippine plate kind of cuts under this other plate. This magma forms the granite, so it picks up a lot of phosphorus from the seabed that ends up in the Rokko Mountains. The aquifers are going through there very slowly, so they pick up all this phosphorus. Well, then, where the specific well is located, it used to be an old seabed, ancient seabed. So you've got old shells, so you can get some calcium from there. And the Achilles heel of sake is iron. These aquifers meet, and there's a third one that comes in that is very oxygen rich. So iron's a transition metal, and so what happens is you go from F2 plus, you lose another electron to F3, so then that precipitates out, gets rid of all your iron, and because they're located close to the ocean, they get a little bit of just enough sodium and magnesium from the seawater seeping in. So it creates the absolute perfect conditions for brewing water. In fact, it's considered to be like for this particular type of brewing, they still use it. Like HAKUTSURU is what we're tasting right now. This is made with Miyamizu water. And this entire area is, so the water must come from Nishinomiya to be called Miyamizu. It's just a contraction of, it's, you'll see on the internet, magic shrine water, all this stuff, but it's really a contraction of Nishinomiya no Mizu. They just say that Miyamizu. It's like contraction to make it easier to say, and it's better marketing. And so these people were literally selling the water. So the guy finds out, kind of by accident at the last minute, switching the water. And the importance in the sake industry is it comes down to, you didn't have testing, you didn't really know what was in your water. And so they started to figure out, wait a second, and just like with brewing, there's certain areas that have famous for brewing water. It's kind of how that happened with sake. Now, we'll end up talking later about areas that have soft water. So this is actually medium hard water. It's richer in minerals, and the yeast needs these as nutrients. That's why it provides a fast fermentation, which back then was a rigorous fast, which meant less chance of spoilage. Now, they end up in Hiroshima later trying to copy the style and make a nice sake there, but their water is very soft. Now, Japan typically has extremely soft water that's very mountainous, and the water just rushes down. It doesn't have time to go through as much rock as it does in, let's say, Europe, for example. Like the German hardness scale goes, they could be up to 20. This water is about an 8. So in Hiroshima, we will talk later about how these Daiginjos and other things, they were able to produce sake with softer water because they would lower the fermentation temperature. That allows the yeast to kind of have time to find nutrients. But that's going to be in our Ginjo episode. So HAKUTSURU is located now in what's called the Nada-Gogo, or Nada-Gogo. These are the 5 famous villages of Nada. And one thing to remember is Nada's kind of glommed onto this, is like, this is the water of Nada. But actually, when this water was discovered, now they were brewing with it, but they didn't really understand what was happening yet, right? So Nishinomiya actually wasn't part of the 5 villages at that time. It didn't become part of the Nada-Gogo until 1886. So if you go to Japan, and we should plan a trip because it'd be epic, but the Nada region is famous for sake, and this water's kind of become part of their story, even though it actually was discovered before that area became part of the 5 villages. So this particular sake you're drinking is from HAKUTSURU. So that Haku means white, and Tsuru is crane, so it's white crane. And this is a Daiginjo, so it's been milled down. We talked about the milling rate last time, so it's 50% milled, which is the minimum you would need to make a Daiginjo. Now, this is not a Jumai, which means they've added a little bit of brewer's alcohol to pull out some esters.
And mention the Daiginjo and what that means. It's kind of almost like saying, okay, this is quality, and then you have a higher quality.
Yeah, so Ginjo's got a couple of meanings. We'll go into really good detail, but basically the short answer is the milling rate. That's all that's actually required. So in other words, if you say Ginjo to put it on a label, you have to mill away at least 40% to have a 60% milling rate. For a Daiginjo, Dai means extra great. They mill it down to at least 50 or less. Like last time we tried a 23. Right. But Ginjo also implies that you're taking extra care and doing things by hand. Right.
And the Junmai Daiginjo means...
Right. So Junmai is another important word that basically Junmai is like the German beer purity law, where they're saying, you're not adding anything. It's not intrinsic to the process. Now, in this case, they're adding brewer's alcohol at the very end of the mash to pull out more esters. In fact, a lot of the stuff that goes to what's called the Kanpai, the famous competitions, they do add brewer's alcohol. They're not Junmais. So you can have a Daiginjo or a Jumai Daiginjo, and that's actually what we have in this case. So just think of Jumai as being, okay, no alcohol added. And if it doesn't say Jumai on it, then you've got some brewer's alcohol added at the end. But they're both going to be milled to the exact same rate. Now, these guys using it for this first one, using a combination of Yamada Nishiki, and they also have their own HAKUTSURU Nishiki, which is something like a proprietary rice that they have. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what do you guys think of this one?
I like it. It's a little more astringent than I thought it might be. I mean, you definitely get the alcohol hit from it. I don't know about you, Rob. I'm tasting almost like a little papaya thing going on there. There's a fruity, I'm like, is it papaya? Is it mango? But there's definitely, I'm getting a fruit thing there.
Yeah, so in Japanese on the side, it says, actually on the box, it says fruity na kori, so the smell is fruity, and sukkiri shita ajiwai, which basically means clean and crisp.
It is crisp.
Papaya, now that you say that, I actually do now taste the papaya.
Yeah.
Now, this is one you could have up to about room temperature. You know, they don't suggest heating this one. I like it slightly chilled. I think it's in a good place right now.
And they say that this one would go very well with the buttermilk fried chicken.
That'll make Colonel Sanders happy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There you go. Get some KFC and some Daiginjo. And yeah, what the heck? Well, you know, I mean, why not? I mean, you do it with wine, you do it with beer, you know. I mean, this is just a different type of wine, so why not? We're going to have to take a short break. We'll be back in just a second with Robert and Don from the Secret Wine Society, where we're sipping sake right here on the Wake Up Call. Good morning.